Black Panther, Wakanda Forever is the newest film from the MCU and the third film to come out in 2022. The people of Wakanda fight to protect their home from the intervening world powers as they mourn the death of King T'Challa. This movie had so many expectations surrounding it, and I'm not even talking about the fact it's a Marvel movie and it's a sequel to one of the biggest films of all time. It really has to do with the tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman. I just want to say he really was a real life superhero. The fact that he starred and was one of the biggest parts in some of the biggest movies of all time while he was battling cancer is one of the craziest things I've ever heard. He is such an inspiration. And when I heard that he passed away around 2 years ago, it really broke my heart. And a lot of people, including me, view T'Challa and Black Panther as his biggest role he's ever done. When people remember him, they think of the Black Panther. So this movie was obviously very important to a lot of people. And I think they did a really great job. This isn't a spoiler. This is going to be spoiler free. But I just want to say when that Marvel logo comes up, you know, the one you see at the beginning of every MCU project, they do a nice little tribute to Chadwick. And it was silent. And the theater, when I saw this film, was dead silent. You couldn't even hear people breathing. It was a surreal moment, and I think they did a great job honoring his legacy. And at the end, I think they did a really great job with a tribute to Chadwick. And what I loved about it was a little bit different than what we normally see, and I think it really hit home. I think they nailed all of it, and honestly, that is the theme with this movie. This is one of the more different MCU movies we've seen. It's more of a slow burner. This movie is almost 3 hours long. It does feel it's a runtime, but it is more of a slow burner. It's one of those movies about coming of age and really about dealing with grief and how it affects people and how some people deal with it differently. But there's a lot of surprises in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I don't think it's as good as the first one, and out of Phase 4 movies, it's probably my second or third favorite. I would say it's probably just as good as Shang-Chi, maybe a little bit less, but for me, probably about the same. But like I said, this just feels really different than what we've normally seen in the MCU. I think Ryan Coogler did an excellent job directing and helming this film, and I think he had his fingerprints all over this film. This doesn't feel like what we've normally got recently in the MCU. I guess when I saw them on opening night, like Thor or Doctor Strange, I really had fun with them, but then over time you think about those films and you feel like they're more of just a product that are just sort of thrown out there. Those films don't feel nearly as good as some of the stuff we've gotten before Endgame. This film, Wakanda Forever, feels like we're getting back on some of those quality films before Endgame and before Phase 4, because it really feels like Ryan Coogler gave it his all when he made this film. Yeah, it's not perfect. It has its issues, but you can just tell that there was so much heart and care, making sure that they really, first of all, honor Chadwick, but also tell a really interesting story to honor the characters as well. I think how this movie plays out is pretty interesting in the way how we don't really have a hero throughout most of the film, and like I said before, it's more of coming of age. I think there's a lot of hidden meanings throughout the film and hidden messages that I think over time are going to make you appreciate the film more. When I saw this on Thursday night, I wanted to review it that night or even on Friday, but I wanted to give myself a little bit of time to think about the film because after first reaction, I was like, yeah, that was pretty good. But thinking about it over the weekend now, I think it's a lot better. I think this is a film that's going to age over time really well. And I think, like I said before, it just feels like something different. I have to say the performances here are absolutely excellent. And I have to imagine there is a lot of real life emotions going into some of these performances. And it really shows. Angela Bassett, sorry if I say the name wrong, but she was fucking amazing. I think she was my favorite performance in the film. She gives a crushing but powerful monologue about how she's really lost everything, but she's Queen of Wakanda. And I thought that was really well done. It hits home, and it just felt so real. A lot of this movie just feels real with raw emotion. That's why it feels different than what we've seen in some of these Marvel films. It's not as much action as you would think. A lot of it is character development, and I think that's why I really appreciate this film. Yes, there's Marvel action in here, and honestly, there are some sequences here that I think are really well done, but there are some that I'm like, they're okay. To Ryan Coogler standards, I thought they'd be a lot better, but I would say overall, I think there's less of that Marvel action and that Marvel humor than we've seen before in these other films. I guess my only issue with the film is I think that there's things that take time over the film to let the film breathe a little bit that I think is executed super well. But then there are things that happen way too quickly. I think the last act of this film, everything happens way too fast. It's really the last third of the film. I thought it was paced pretty well, considering everything that they're trying to tell throughout the film. But overall, I think they did an excellent job with this film. I think that over time, people are going to really appreciate this film even more. I think the villain here was really great. I thought Namor was a really great villain. He was intimidating. He fucked shit up all the time. But you see where he's coming from. Just like Killmonger. I think Killmonger's a better villain, but I thought Namor was still one of the more interesting MCU villains we've gotten. Because you totally understand his motivations. And when he's on screen, he is definitely a threat to be reckoned with. And all of that was meshed really well. I think the overall story for this film was excellent. There are some execution problems throughout the film and some pacing problems a little bit. And I think there's some minor editing issues, just me being nitpicky. And I just think recently these visual effects have gone downhill a little bit. And I do think it's because Marvel's overworking these poor visual effects artists that deserve to be paid more and give them some realistic hours. But sometimes it shows. But overall, I think this film did a fantastic job. To follow up to one of the biggest films of all time, one of the best films in the MCU, I think this is one of the best films in Phase 4, and I think they did a great job honoring Chadwick's legacy, which I think, honestly, is the most important part of this film. It doesn't need to be a Marvel film, and it doesn't really feel like a Marvel film most of the time. It feels like a surreal experience about grieving over someone that was really special and getting through it. And yeah, there's Marvel stuff throughout the film, but I think they really dialed back a lot of it, which was extremely smart. There isn't really a post-credit scene that ties into any Marvel movies moving forward. I thought the post-credit scene was one of the best post-credit scenes I've seen in the whole entire MCU. It was beautiful, it was fantastic, and my favorite part about it, like I said before, it doesn't really tie into any Marvel movies moving forward. They knew exactly what they needed to do with this film, and I think for the most part, they executed on everything almost flawlessly. And I think that this is a film, over time, people are going to appreciate even more. And I really do think they nailed it when they wanted to honor the legacy of the great Chadwick Boseman. I'm going to give Black Panther Wakanda Forever 8 Davey Daves. There were parts in this film that really felt surreal. And I'm not going to lie, there are parts where I actually teared up. Because everything just feels so emotional, so powerful, so real. And I'm curious to hear what people thought about the film. I think I can see it being very split. Some people loving it, some people hating it. But like I said, I think this is something different than what we've normally seen. And I'm just curious to see what people are going to think about this film 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But right now, if you've seen the film, please let me know what you guys thought. I'm curious to hear. And thank you so much for watching. Click here to see more of Dave's Takes.